ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Leader. Warning, this episode contains strong language as well as major spoilers for Connor's wedding, episode 3 of the final season of Succession. So, it happened. And if you don't know what happened, you've got a Roman Roy monologue's length of time to pause this podcast and come back when you do. Right, that's it. That's all you get, because Succession fans, we just got our final fuck off. An unexpected, heart-wrenchingly real and disorientating goodbye to the iconic Logan Roy just 3 episodes into the final season. Yes, there's a lot to unpack, but we're going to do it. Every Tuesday until the final of Succession, we'll be reviewing each episode after it drops on the Leader podcast. Be sure to listen to hear analysis, insight and general fandom around one of the most talked about TV series ever. Joining me now to discuss that episode are...
I'm Elizabeth Gregory, I'm a culture writer.
I'm Martin Robinson, I'm acting features director at Evening Standard.
Hamish MacBain, deputy editor at ES magazine.
So first of all, Liz, season 4, episode 3, just give us a short summary of what happened.
Okay, so it opens with Rome on the phone to his dad, which picks up at the end of the last episode where Logan had been trying to persuade him to join forces with him. And Logan's asking Roman to come with him to Sweden because he's going to go and speak to Madsen and kind of finalise the deal. Rome is, however, at Connor's wedding. And so Shiv's there as well, and Kendall's there, Connor's there, of course. And it's kind of in the harbour of New York. It's grey skies. And so they're all in the boat. And then... spoiler alert, big time, Logan dies. And so literally the rest of the episode, 45 minutes, is just about kind of how that comes about, which I'm sure we'll get into, but it's major drama.
I think it's important to pick up from what was said last week on the episode. Liz, you wanted this to happen. Did it live up to what you wanted?
Yeah, actually, way more than could have been expected, because so many elements of it kind of harked back to that first ever episode. And it was kind of very eerie and moving in a way. The fact that we didn't see Logan's body, that he was alone, he was not surrounded by his family, he was surrounded by his cronies, which kind of made a lot of sense because that's who he spent time with over the course of his life. But then equally to see his children so affected by him and telling him that they loved him over the phone when they didn't know he was alive or not, it was just incredibly moving. And then against the backdrop of this kind of awful wedding as well. Yeah, I can't imagine a more kind of moving and impactful ending.
Martin, did you expect this?
Well, I mean, as I said last time, I was like, please don't let Logan die, because I thought it was going to be like a massive cop-out for the show. And it wasn't that. It was done brilliantly. See, I thought it was going to be, it would be like the end of the season, he might die, as everyone was kind of discussing, and that would be just a bit of a crappy end. There wouldn't really be, no one had won it, he just left by default, someone would get it kind of thing. But the show managed to completely pull the rug out. So I was not expecting it at all this early in the season. And I just thought the manner in which they did it just made it absolutely unreal for a number of reasons. But I really did think, I was trying to think of other deaths, of some of the greats, like the Tony Soprano death. Now that we're doing massive spoilers, hopefully no one's seen that one as well. Any more I can do? But that one was a very powerful and strange way to approach such a thing. And this was the similar sort of approach as well. It all happened off screen. We didn't see him falling over, clutching his heart. There wasn't a great drama. It was done in a very mundane way.
Well, it was similar also to Omar in The Wire, in that it was this really kind of, you take this figure who is basically throughout the show is a superhero who is immortal, and then you give them this really underwhelming, just super normal, just anonymous almost death. There's no big monologue on the deathbed. There's no sort of Tony Soprano coming out of the thing and killing everybody. It's just a really mundane old man goes to the toilet and dies. It's like...
Yeah, and I think that's what really made it powerful as well. Like throughout, I mean, I've never felt emotional throughout Succession. I think even in the earlier episodes, I think there was a Tom and Shiv moment, and some of my colleagues were sort of saying, "Oh, they're so emotional." And I was like, I don't know whether I'm a cold-hearted person, but I was just like, I'm not bothered. I never really believed those two anyway. But this really got to me, and I think it was, and it was just because of how normalised it was and sort of how unexpected, which I think is kind of the way that death usually works in families. You never really get a moment to say what you always wanted to the person that you've lost. You'd never have the big showdown and a big resolution. It takes everybody off guard. And you're dealing with like things like a bad reception, as they were on there, weren't they? And not knowing what's happening. And the way that they did it so that you were also unsure. It seemed like a joke. You didn't see his body. You didn't really see them working on him. It was just kind of what Tom was saying. You just thought, is this bullshit? Is this a trick? Is this a scam just to make all the kids admit that they loved him?
And also, it was good. It was unveiled to us almost as an audience, almost as though we were one of the kids. As in, you kind of shared in their complete and utter shock and disbelief. I've got to say, I thought there was some pretty phenomenal acting going on.
Shiv, I thought was a standout.
Well, the three Sibs, but also I think Kerry is kind of becoming a kind of stealth star of this series, where when she came out and was doing that kind of almost like that kind of laughing, it was kind of ridiculous, but also really unsettling and also sort of believable that someone would act like that in that situation. It just felt very, very discomforting, but also quite true.
Yeah, and I was reading an interview with director Mark Mylod, I think that's his name, who said that they filmed it in real time just to add to those performances and to get to make them as real and to get that continuation, which apparently is like a nightmare because they don't shoot it on digital, they shoot it on film. So it's a real logistical nightmare. And I don't think there's like a good half an hour at the centre of it that they shot in real time. I don't think it exists in the actual episode in its entirety. I think they cut some of the stuff in. But that's the way that they filmed it. And so you really, really did feel it, didn't you? That all the stuff where he had to go and find Shiv because she wasn't around and what does he say to her and the way that she reacts, that was all done sort of like in the moment. And it was just, it's just unbelievably powerful. But just how matter of fact it all is as well. And what do you do? What do you say to each other? How do you react and how do you accept it? I just thought it was extraordinary.
Well, also it's kind of sat in quite stark contrast to much of Succession. As in, if you actually look, I mean, there were some superb one-liners like nestled in there, but a lot of like for about the middle 30 minutes of the episode, the dialogue didn't just go much beyond what the fuck, there were no, carefully crafted zingers. It was just people sort of struggling to get the words out. And, obviously we've grown accustomed to Succession being the succession of one-liners, but it was just basically people very nearly not being able to speak for about half an hour, which made it quite a unique episode, I thought.
Let's go to the ads. Stay there to hear Martin Robinson, Elizabeth Gregory and Hamish MacBain on what this could all mean for the future of Waystar Royco. Welcome back. Still with me are the Evening Standard's Martin Robinson, Elizabeth Gregory and Hamish MacBain.
It does lay the question of what happens now. I think now we're going to have a big power struggle between the suits around him and his kids. I think that's where it's leading to, I would imagine. So there was also that moment where Roman looks at his phone and he sees how the markets have reacted to his dad's death, and he goes and he just holds his fingers to it and says, "That's the measure of my dad. That's my dad. That's a difference. That there's a monetary value on a person, and a guy like that, there is a business impact." And it's kind of like it's a bit of a.
But they're just
hard
institutionalized into that life, aren't they? Every character in it. It's just. In the way that when you're a journalist and someone of note dies, then as journalists, you just start instantly thinking, right, what's the opening para? And it's not really any different to that. They're just institutionalized in this world. And that's all they know. All they know is like, how's the stock price, and how do we sell this to the media, and what's going to look good, and what are the optics here.
But I also thought that moment was quite kind of tender and touching when he said about the stock price, and he looked at it and he said, "That's my dad." Because I think for people who've lost people, in that moment when you do, it's like, no, you feel like the world has changed and the world has stopped and this devastating thing has happened. But when you go outside, the world does not care. And you just have to kind of keep on ticking along, and it's as if nothing's happened. But for Roman, he's like, oh no, look, my dad's death does matter. And it has affected people all around the world.
100%. And also there are a lot of people who deal with grief who they just go into that mode of just, right, what needs sorting out? Okay, better clean the house out, better organise it. Like, I thought Kendall's line about we can just get a funeral off the rack. Yeah. Reagan with tweaks was good. There were some really, really good lines in it. The Gregging stuff at the start was very good at lulling you into a false sense of security. And also Carl talking about Kerry, calling Kerry Chuckles the Clown was very funny.
I want to talk about Kerry, actually. Do we think like maybe there's something else going on? Like, because she does seem to be getting more and more prominent as the series is going on.
Well, I think the interesting thing about the way it is now is obviously the patriarch is gone. All the yes people have got no one to say yes to. And you do kind of have the floor open now to there are any number of really unusual alliances that now seem vaguely feasible. So you could, for example, see Kerry and Roman teaming up, or I don't know, Mattson and Greg. You know what I mean? You can see, because there's no Logan to navigate, and everybody else is a kind of, is a smaller character really. So there will be people looking for team ups, I think, and people,
Definitely, but I think that's it for her though. I really think that's what they were saying at the end of it, because she has always been like, the boss's girlfriend, and the second he's gone, they immediately ushered her up to one side, and there's that final image we saw of her, and she was just left on the tarmac, went off on her own in the car, and she was very deliberately shown as now being nowhere near. Right. And then so was Tom as well, interestingly, in the same shot. Then it just went over to Tom, who was also on his own, because he was always protected by his position next to Logan. Without him, because he was without Shiv at that moment, then he was nowhere. And then towards the end of the episode, he finally made a little bit more of a connection with her and eventually got ushered over to the car. So he was kind of like brought back in. But there was that moment where he was completely gone. And that's where Kerry is. I don't think we'll see her again. But it's interesting on the other team-ups, though.
Yeah, I think that's interesting about Tom, because he's on the phone to Greg and he says, I've lost my protector now, doesn't he? So, and then there's that moment where Shiv gives her statement and then he hugs her, and you're trying to work out whether he's doing that to be manipulative or whether there's actually a connection there, and it could be both. Mm-hmm. But then in the end, when he's in the car with her and they drive off together, you kind of think, oh, there you go, Tom's found his new protector. Yeah. There's an element of that for sure.
But also you say that about Kerry, but it's like, It depends. We haven't really got a sense of her character, of just how Machiavellian she is. Because she could have, while she's been with Logan, she could have been, stockpiling all manner of dirt and leverage, But that's the exciting thing, is that it's like everybody is now, like the opportunists there, the real Machiavellians, like the Jerrys and the Carls, and everybody will be going, I've got a shot at the throne here. Oh, by the way, huge mention for Jerry's look at the wedding, which was, come on. It was like, that was the real story of this episode, if you ask me.
But she's the one, she feels like, because she's raging as well. Like, she's the one who is like raging against Roman. Obviously, he tells her that she's about to be fired. That doesn't happen, of course. But she's the one there's a real fury there. And she's always been the one she was put in charge of the company, wasn't she, for a while. And she's really got So I sort of feel like that's the way it's going to develop in the next episode. She's going to be at one side of it, running things or trying to take control in some way.
Jerry fancies herself as the kind of Rishi Sunak of the company, as in all these maniacs have been busy throwing everything everywhere and destroying everything. And now it's time for the calm, clever person to come in and run it.
That's what I think as well, that the cronies are going to crowd around Jerry, and then there's going to be the kids, and then Roman's going to say, no, but we fired you, and she's going to say, yeah, but it didn't go through because Logan died, so actually I'm the rightful, because I think, was she number 2?
Well, she was CEO at one point, wasn't she? He made her interim CEO. She was certainly a very, very, probably the most trusted advisor or whatever. But I mean, if you think this is episode 3, we've got 7 more episodes to go. I just feel like that is all going to be jostling for power. Matsson, is going to do something regarding the deal, as in he might just walk away from it, or he might try and lowball them or whatever. Everybody's going to be panicking. And like I say, I think lots of unexpected alliances could materialize. I can totally see, like Greg and Kerry or Tom and Jerry.
Roman and Jerry would be the people's choice, I would say. Everyone would really like that.
Well, no, Greg and Tom would be the people's choice.
Succession is available to watch in the UK on Sky Atlantic and Now. And that's it from this episode. We'll be back next Tuesday with more Succession insight. The Leader podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.